History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 586th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast, Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I'm your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we are bringing a location that was suggested by our listener, Nicole Cardarelli, and that is the Houghton Mansion in North Adams, Massachusetts. And it just so happens that this property was bought by this little group. I'm sure nobody has ever heard of them. You know, the Freemasons?
Ah, okay.
And they held it for 90 years and built one of their temples right behind it. And, you know, we've had a lot of listeners who've asked us, hey, are you ever going to cover the Masons? We want to hear about the Masons. We'll be doing that on this episode since they were there for such a long period of time. So we'll get into that because that group has long fascinated me. Probably for decades I've been reading about them. So I'm looking forward to discussing all of that. Before we get into the history and hauntings at the Houghton Mansion, we want to welcome into the Spooktacular crew Jared, Layla, who makes me want to sing the song by Eric Clapton, Layla.
Oh boy, here we go.
She'd probably go running, screaming from the Spooktacular crew. And Reagan, the Golden Retriever, who we got to meet in person.
We sure did. Thank you so much for joining the Spooktacular crew.
And now, this moment in Oddity.
The moment in Oddity was suggested by Dewey Oxberger. The Indiana Bell Building was constructed in 1907 and stands at 240 North Meridian Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. By 1929, Indiana Bell Company determined that they required a larger building to accommodate their business needs. At the beginning, the company thought they would just demolish their current building and build a new one. However, after hiring Vonnegut, Bone, and Muller architects for the demolition and rebuild of the structure, the architects told Indiana Bell that the building itself did not need a demo job, just a rotate job. If the building was rotated 90 degrees and shifted 100 feet west, the company would end up with the extra space they desired to build on an addition. As reported in different newspaper articles, the rotation launched on October 14, 1930. During the 31-day process, there were rollers, T5 ton jacks, and 18 men involved. Amazingly, business as usual continued within the building while the 11,000-ton structure was in the process of rotation. The rotation rate was calculated at 15 inches per hour. This rate meant that the employees working within could not even feel the movement of the building. At the end of the process, the architectural team was able to place the building within 1/64th of an inch from the original calculated location. We are always amazed at stories where buildings are picked up and moved to a different location, but to move an 8-story, 11,000-ton building while employees continue to work within its walls certainly is odd.
This history podcast is haunted.
And now this month in history.
In the month of May, on the 10th in 1849, angry crowds rioted outside of Astor Place Opera House in Lower Manhattan. British actor William Charles Macready and American actor Edwin Forrest were to perform Macbeth inside the Opera House. Both were well-known Shakespearean actors, and a conflict had developed between the two of them. 3 days before the riot, Forrest supporters had bought hundreds of tickets for seats in the theater. Most of the audience were working-class New Yorkers. The protesters had brought objects like rotten eggs, potatoes, apples, lemons, shoes, and bottles filled with stinky liquids. I'm sure some of it might be urine. And the protesters began with hissing and booing during Macready's performance and then began hurling the objects at the stage. Some of the theater goers even ripped up their seats. The riot was fueled by anti-British sentiment, especially with the Irish immigrants who faced discrimination and viewed Macready as a symbol of British dominance and the upper class. On May 10th, police were concerned about the level of manpower they had available if a more serious riot occurred. The state's 7th Regiment were assembled in Washington Square Park, as well as mounted troops, light artillery, and hussars, to a total of 350 men, along with the 100 police officers outside the theater alone. By the time the play opened at 7:30 p.m., 10,000 people filled the streets surrounding the theater. The rioters broke theater windows and attempted to set fire to the building. By the end of the riot, between 22 and 31 people were killed, and 259 were injured, including both civilians, police, and militia. The Astor Place Riot is also known as the Shakespeare Riot. It is reported that prior to the riot, New York had not known so much gunfire and death since the Revolutionary War.
The Houghton Mansion in North Adams, Massachusetts was named for the family that commissioned its construction. Their biography is ripe for ghost stories, with a tragic car accident leading to further deaths from broken hearts and suicides. The house then spent nearly a century hosting a chapter of the Masonic Order. The Masons have always carried an air of mystery around their organization, with rumors of bizarre rituals, sacrifices, and hidden knowledge. Many former Masonic temples and centers pop up on haunted lists, and we have featured a few. Join us for the history and hauntings of the Houghton Mansion.
North Adams, Massachusetts was settled by Europeans in 1745 during King George's War, when Fort Massachusetts was built along the Hoosac River. That fort would be burned during the siege of Fort Massachusetts in 1746, when 21 militiamen were no match for a French and Indian battalion numbering 1,000. Yeah, 1,000 versus 21?
Goodness.
The fort was later rebuilt and then refortified for the French and Indian War in 1754. After that, it fell into disrepair. The North Adams Women's Club raised funds to reconstruct the fort, and it was reopened as a memorial in 1933 that could be toured. That shut down in the 1960s, and the fort was demolished. A commemorative plaque with a reconstructed chimney are all that remains. The town of North Adams was named for Samuel Adams and became a mill town since water power could be generated from the confluence of the Hoosac River, and various manufacturing was the main industry. Everything from clothing to marble to ironworks to cabinets were produced. In the mid-1800s, Arnold Printworks became one of the world's leading manufacturers of printed textiles, and this company was started by Albert Charles Houghton, or AC as most people called him.
A.C. Houghton was born in 1844 in Vermont. A.C. was a driven man from an early age and founded the Houghton Chemical Works of Stamford before he was 21 years old. He also got involved in real estate and started amassing a small fortune. Cordelia Smith of Stamford became his wife in 1866, and they would have 5 daughters, Laura, Florence, Susan, Alice, and Mary. In 1868, A.C. opened the Parker Mill in North Adams, and he would move the family there in 1870. In 1881, he became the president of the Arnold Print Works. And he even dipped his toes into beer. I wouldn't want to drink that mug of beer.
No, I don't think I'm into toe jam ale.
Toe jam ale. And he even dipped his toes into beer when he took over the A.J. Houghton Brewing Company out of Boston when his father, A.J. Houghton, died in 1892. There were 31 breweries in Boston at the time. The Stony Brook area had 24 alone, and only one of them is still active today. Many of the buildings are gone too, but the A.J. Houghton one is still there at the corner of Station and Halleck Streets. The brewery specialized in Vienna lager and also made Pavonia lager beer, Vienna Old Time Lager, and Rockland Ale. That shut down in 1918 due to Prohibition. Houghton became the director of the Boston and Albany Railroad in 1895. In 1896, AC became the first mayor of North Adams, and he served 2 one-year terms.
I wish he would actually do something.
Besides dipping his toe in beer?
Yes. It was after this that AC decided to build his third home in North Adams. This would be his most extravagant house and was designed in the neoclassical revival style. The outer clapboards are thinner at the base to make the house appear taller. And unfortunately today, you can't see that anymore because they've put siding over it, and they didn't match it to do the same thing. It stood 3 stories and had a roof of Spanish tile. Behind the house, a formal garden was planted. There was a large horse barn on the property as well. In 1900, AC and his wife Cordelia moved in with their 23-year-old daughter Mary, who had decided not to marry and planned to just care for AC, whose health was failing. At this point, Florence, Susan, and Alice had all married and were raising their own families. And Laura, she had died back in infancy, so they just have the 4 daughters at this point, and Mary's decided she's going to sacrifice herself and not get married and take care of her dad.
Cars were all the rage by 1914, and the Houghtons decided to buy their first automobile. This was a 7-passenger Pierce Arrow touring car.
And isn't it weird that we just did the S.K. Pierce house?
Mm-hmm. Synchronicity. There was just one problem. The Houghtons had no idea how to drive a car. They decided to send the man who had been the keeper of their horses and carriages to go learn how to drive the car. His name was John Witters, and he had also been a family friend.
And I put that in there because I wanted people to know that he was close to the family. They knew him. He wasn't just a servant or a paid help or what have you.
Now he was their official chauffeur. AC decided to travel to Bennington, Vermont, and he told Mary that she could bring a friend. She asked her childhood friend Sybil Houghton to join her, and Sybil's husband Robert came along. The group set out in the Pierce Arrow for the pleasure drive with Witters at the wheel. This drive would be anything but pleasurable.
First, the road they were driving along was under repair. This was a road designed for carriages, not cars. That means the road was very narrow, so 2 cars could barely fit when passing. As Witters made his way up the gentle grade of Oak Hill Road, he saw a team of horses parked ahead on the right side of the road. So he decides he's going to pass them on the left. But there wasn't enough road there, and the tires on the left side of the car left the road, causing the car to tilt off the road. They'd been heading uphill, and so the car rolled down the embankment, and it rolled 3 times before coming to a stop. Mary was still in the car, but everyone else had been thrown from the car. If you have not seen what a Pierce Arrow is, this is a car that does not have a roof. So you can imagine that if Mary was still in the car, that wasn't a good thing. She was mortally injured, but still alive. She was taken to North Adams Hospital, where she passed away later that day. Sybil Houghton had been killed instantly with the first roll. Dr. Houghton, her husband, AC, and Witters all walked away from the accident with what they described as minor injuries, and those minor injuries did include some breaks and such, so it's not like they just had scrapes and bruises.
Witters was riddled with guilt, and the following morning he was found dead in the cellar of the horse barn with a bullet in his head. He had apparently taken his own life with a horse pistol. The investigator for the state of Vermont exonerated Witters and said that the soft shoulder of the road was to blame. But that mattered little, since Witters was no longer alive. The family had him buried in their family plot at Southview Cemetery, so they didn't blame him either. A.C. Houghton would die 10 days after the accident. Some say that it was from injuries caused by the accident, but others claim he died from a broken heart. He was 70 years old.
And I guess the way that this happened is that the way the cars were back then, he actually was sitting on the right-hand side of the car rather than the left-hand side of the car, how we usually drive, and that the spare tire was over on that side of the car too, so it was hard to see that side of the road. And so that's how it was, easy for him to have those tires on that side of the car leave the road because he couldn't quite see the distance. And they actually had one of his friends come and stay with him and keep an eye on him because they were worried. I don't know if he was just saying, I want to die or I should die or whatever, but they had a feeling that he was suicidal. And I don't know why they let him, but he said he needed to go out and feed the horses and nobody went with him. And so then that's when he took his own life, unfortunately. Cordelia Houghton remained in the house until her death 4 years later in 1918. By this point, Florence had moved into the house with her husband, William Gallup, to care for her mother. The couple remained in the house until 1926, and they sold it to the local Masonic Order, which is today the Lafayette Greylock Freemasons. This was formed from a merger of two lodges, with the original dating back to 1847. The Masons would remain in the house for 90 years. They pulled out the formal garden that was in the back and constructed their own lodge building on the spot. Freemasonry claims to go back to the Middle Ages, but the oldest document referencing the Masons is the Regius poem from 1390. The first Grand Lodge of England formed in 1717 from 4 lodges. The fraternity spread throughout Europe and then came over to the American colonies. Many of the founding fathers were Freemasons. As a matter of fact, Kelly, did you know that 44 signers of the Declaration of Independence belonged to the Fraternal Order?
I did not know it was that high of a number.
President George Washington laid the cornerstone for the U.S. Capitol on September 18, 1793, and paintings about that moment feature him wearing his Masonic apron during the ceremony. So it was a Masonic ceremony that was conducted to lay that cornerstone. He placed an inscribed silver plate under the cornerstone, and to this day, nobody can figure out where the cornerstone is located. Metal detectors have been unable to find that metal plate. So nobody knows which one did he lay down, and clearly they didn't engrave it. A lot of the time they'll engrave, this is the cornerstone, but they didn't do that. Our Supreme Court was shaped by Chief Justice John Marshall, also a Mason. So you could see as our country's getting started and setting up its government, we have a lot of Masons who have their fingers in there. The goal of Freemasonry is to spread the ideals of the Enlightenment and contribute to social improvement. They have founded orphanages and homes for widows and the elderly. And we've talked about several of them here on the podcast. I can't name all of them off the top of my head, but I feel like there's a winery, I think, that we covered, and I can't remember where it's located, that had once been a Masonic home for widows and orphans at one point. And while they've done many good things, there are those that claim there is a dark side to Freemasonry. And let me just say, much of what we're going to share here is based on conspiracy theories and such, but it's extremely intriguing, and we find some of it compelling. And I do want to say, I know for me, I have friends and family that are Freemasons, members of the order. So none of this is meant to be negative towards you at all, but I just want to put some of the stuff out there that we've found. And I will say that many members of the Freemasons and the female counterpart is the Eastern Star join for the camaraderie, business dealings. It's a social kind of thing for them. And most probably don't know the ancient origins of their rituals and maybe think it's all just a fun little aside. I don't know when they're doing the rituals if they're just like, okay, this is weird, but sure, whatever. I don't know. If somebody asks me to join their group and then they start telling me to roll up one pant leg and unbutton my shirt and throw something over my shoulder and then put a noose around my neck, I'd be like, what are we doing?
Excuse me?
I think I would be like, maybe I don't want to join your group, but that means that few reach the upper echelons of membership and probably are never taught some of the darker things. Now, there really may be nothing to any of this, but let's be honest. Kelly, if you have secret handshakes and hide your rituals and membership is by invite only, you are asking for scrutiny.
That's true.
Anyone who has been inside these old Masonic lodges has probably gotten a weird feeling because of the symbology all around them, from the black and white checkerboard floors, which is supposed to be showing you the evil and the good, to carved chairs, and some of them are massive chairs, have all kinds of weird things carved on them. You've got sculptures of ancient deities, and the head dude of the different temples is called the Worshipful Master. I don't know. Believe me, I've done Taekwondo, and we do call the head black belt the Grandmaster, and then you become a master also black belt. So I understand that, when you use those words, they can be used, but it's just
the
like
gist of it.
Worshipful Master? I don't know. That's a little over the top for me. The weirdest temple that I have seen is in D.C. The Masonic Lodge in D.C. is called the House of the Temple and was inspired by the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. So, yeah, a tomb. It's basically its own giant mausoleum. I mean, it was modeled off of one, and that was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The interior has black statues representing Egyptian figures made from black marble. That marble came from Lake Champlain and took 15 years to find. They are all carved from that one piece, and the carving was done inside the temple. There's also Greek figures that adorn the lamps and the chandeliers. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
Freemasonry communicates secretly through symbolism. Washington, D.C. was laid out specifically according to Mason design. From overhead, one can see the pentagram that Masons have as one of their symbols. The square and compass are other symbols laid out in the street plans and such for D.C. The most obvious symbol is the Washington Monument. We all know that it's meant to be a giant phallic symbol. It measures 66,635 inches tall and 6,660 inches long at the base.
Now, I know we've got, a 35 in there and then a 0, but both of them have 666 at the beginning. And both the height and the width at the base. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that they both have 666 there.
And what does that phallic symbol need to be complete?
What, Kelly?
A womb, right?
Oh, I see where this is going. Fertility, anyone?
That would be the domed Capitol building.
Mm-hmm.
In ancient mythology and the mystery religions of Egypt, placing this phallus and womb in this way was like setting up an energy generator, and this was to draw up the seed of Osiris from the underworld. For those that don't know the Egyptian myth behind this, Osiris and Isis were brother and sister, and also became husband and wife. They also had a brother named Set, who was jealous of Osiris and killed him one day so that he could be king. Set cut Osiris's body into 13 pieces and scattered them. Isis was devastated and managed to collect 12 pieces, but she never found his phallus. She had great magical powers and brought Osiris back to life. She fashioned him a phallus from a magical obelisk and soon becomes pregnant. After this, Osiris descended to the underworld, and he is lord of that domain. Their son Horus then became king of Egypt. Another location where you can find this design is St. Peter's Square. There's a giant obelisk and then St. Peter's Basilica as the womb.
Yep, so if you've ever looked at an overhead of St. Peter's Square, you'll see almost exactly the same thing you see in Washington, D.C. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, too. Francis Bacon was an English philosopher and the father of empiricism. He was a part of the scientific revolution, and he wrote a book titled New Atlantis about a utopian island. Bacon believed that America was the New Atlantis, and some think that he actually believed that America was Atlantis. He was influential to some of the founders. Thomas Jefferson wrote, Francis Bacon, John Locke, and Isaac Newton, I consider them as the 3 greatest men that have ever lived, without any exception, and as having laid the foundation of these superstructures which have been raised in the physical and moral sciences. Thomas Jefferson was also the man who suggested that the Capitol should resemble the Roman Pantheon, which was a circular domed rotunda dedicated to all pagan gods, and I've actually been inside of it. And when you are inside of it and you look up, you can see that there is this round circle there. It was an opening. They call it an oculus. You have the same thing in the Capitol. When you look up through the dome, it's like looking up through the oculus. It was thought that this was the way for the spirit or soul to go out into the heavens to become a constellation. Caesar, that was supposed to be how he was going to be elevated to basically a god. And going back to the Masonic temple that's there in D.C., they have this huge skylight at the top of it. I believe that's kind of supposed to be the same effect, that this is where the spirits or souls can come and go. And then, of course, you've got the name of the Capitol. Thomas Jefferson wanted it to be called the Capitol, and it was inspired by the Capitolium. And this was the temple of Jupiter. It was an ancient Roman temple dedicated not only to Jupiter, but also to Juno and Minerva. Capitoliums were built on prominent areas in many cities in Italy and the Roman provinces, and all of them were dedicated to some kind of a god. So you've got one of our presidents here who is a Mason, and he's decided that he wants our Capitol to be built like the Roman Pantheon, which was dedicated to gods, and he's calling it the same thing. I don't know what you're supposed to glean from that, but it does make me wonder, Well, then you go inside the Capitol, and have you ever been in the Capitol in Washington, D.C.?
I have not.
You've never been to Washington, D.C., have you? Okay, so when you look up into that dome of the Capitol building, you will see one of the strangest murals you've ever seen in your life. So if you ever go there, please take a look up. You'll see the Apotheosis of Washington. Now, this is a fresco painting that was done by Greek-Italian artist Constantino Brumidi back in 1865. And we've seen lots of paintings of the president or sculptures. And usually he's either in some of his colonial upper crust kind of wear, or he's wearing his military uniform. Well, in this, nope, he's not. He's just got a little, I don't know what you want to call it, like blanket or something thrown over his lap. He has no clothes on. So
oh my,
that's the only thing that's covering him. He's got a couple fingers that he's pointing up, and he's surrounded by a bunch of Greek and Roman, or whether you're looking at Greek or Roman, a bunch of gods. And it's like, what is happening here? And that whole terminology, the apotheosis of Washington, is basically him being elevated to a god. And that's happening in the Capitol Dome. I don't know. Just kind of weird. I leave it to you guys to see what you think about that. But when I've read and looked at all of that stuff, I've been like, So when it comes to the founding of America and they say that we were founded as a Christian nation, I'm not quite sure where they're getting that from. Because if I was to look at all the symbolism that is put in with America and our founding, I would say that is not true. The symbolism doesn't go with it. Now, some believe that Francis Bacon, was the father of Freemasonry in America. So that's why his name comes up a lot with this. And they really look to what he wrote about the New Atlantis to set up our government and such here too.
Masonic lodges offer 3 Masonic degrees, and these are entered apprentice, fellowcraft, and master mason. Most Masons fall into those degrees, but there are Masonic bodies that offer higher degrees to Master Masons, all the way up to 33rd degree.
I'm sure for those of you that follow conspiracy theories and such, the number 33 comes up a lot. I mean, what is the title of the club that Walt Disney started over there?
Yes,
Club 33.
Club 33.
I mean, anytime that 33 comes up, it always kind of perks my antennae, shall I say?
That's what Shriners are. 33rd degree Masons. Their main ritual reflects on this character named Hiram Abiff, which Masons claim was the chief architect of King Solomon's temple. The Bible does mention a master craftsman named Hiram in 1 Kings 7, verses 13 through 14, and he cast the bronze furnishings and ornate decorations for the temple. The king of Tyre sent building materials for the temple, and his name was also Hiram, but it isn't believed by Masons that this was Hiram Abiff. The Masonic ritual reenacts his murder at the hands of 3 fellowcraft Masons. He is ambushed while leaving and tied up. The 3 demand to know the secrets of a Master Mason, and he refuses to tell them. Each one asks and then strikes him with a Mason's tool. The first 2 hits injure him, and the last kills him. His body is hidden under a pile of rubble temporarily, and then the assailants retrieve it at night and take it outside the city of Jerusalem and bury it in a shallow grave. Hiram's body is found later by other Masons and given a proper burial. King Solomon declares that the secret word of a Master Mason is now lost, so he replaces it with another secret word. And that is the main secret the upper echelon of Masons are keeping.
Yeah, so I don't know what kind of a word this is, but wow, it must be something else that they've kept it a secret for all of these years. Other rituals conducted by the Masons are to raise Osiris, who was called Apollo by the Greeks. Ancient myths believe that Apollo will be raised again and indwell a man and take his place, leading a new golden age. And just to really add something to this, you know the missions to the moon, what were those called, Kelly?
Apollo?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how they use that name Apollo and then a number after it? Well, Buzz Aldrin is a Mason, and he carried a special deputation with him that was intended to establish territorial jurisdiction on the moon for the Grand Lodge of Texas. Why do they want to have some, ownership of the moon? Oh, and I should also point out, I know this isn't the ghost in you, but in the Bible, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, 9:11, it says, "They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollo." So that is who's supposed to, when we get to the end times, Apollo is what's going to crawl out of wherever. I mean, he's the angel of the bottomless pit. Yeah, anything that we're doing that's dedicated towards Apollo or trying to raise up Apollo, why do they want to raise up Apollo if that means the end is coming? And I don't know. Another one of those things. Then, Kelly, I wanted to find out more about this particular chapter of Masons that's in or was in the Houghton Mansion. And this is off of Facebook. So I was looking at their Facebook page. I noticed that they've been having these like classes and courses and that kind of thing. So I don't know if this was particular to them, because at the very top it says coming to a lodge near you. And then it says the exemplification. And Kelly, what is the image that they put that on?
The movie poster from The Exorcist.
Okay, what? I mean, I looked at it and I went, so they're offering some kind of classes or courses that says coming to a lodge near you, the exemplification, and then they use the Exorcist movie poster as the image? I mean, what are you trying to say here? Again, maybe it's just my little conspiracy mind going crazy, but that just makes me go, huh. All right, so that was our quote-unquote deep dive into the Freemasons. Hopefully for those of you who wanted to know more about that helped a little bit with that. Believe me, I have a whole lot more information on that, but I don't want to bore the people who aren't really into that kind of stuff and get back over here to talking about the house and then what kinds of hauntings we have going on here. The Masons, unfortunately, couldn't upkeep the house after 90 years. And in 2017, they sold it to hotel developer Benjamin Svensson for $160,000, which doesn't seem like a lot of money when you think this was somebody's mansion. And the real bummer about it is that means it's privately owned. So it is no longer open for tours or investigations. So that's a real bummer. The cool thing about the Masons is they were happy to have people come in and do tours and to do overnights and investigations. So they were doing that all the time. So now for almost 8 years, nobody's been inside of it. The house still looks much like it did when the Houghtons lived there. Obviously, I said earlier that there's siding covering the clapboard. The Spanish tile roof has also been replaced with an asphalt one. This is said to be the most haunted place in North Adams. Masons, visitors, and investigators all have reported hearing the disembodied voices of a man and a lady thought to be Mr. and Mrs. Houghton. Shadow figures have also been seen many times, and Mary Houghton's former room has always been a place that's made people feel an overwhelming sense of sorrow. There also is the spirit of a young girl in the basement who is thought to go back to a house that was on the property before the Houghton Mansion. The mansion was built on the basement and foundation from that previous house, and we don't know who the little girl is, why she's there. She's seen walking across the basement and fading into the walls. The lockers that the Masons had in what they called their locker room would open and close on their own all the time. That would be a little unnerving, hearing lockers opening and being like, there's nobody in there.
There are those who believe that the activities of the Masons may have conjured entities in the house as well. And it does seem that most Masonic buildings have some kind of haunting going on inside. Same for the Oddfellows. Could it be their use of real human bones and rituals, particularly in the past?
Yes.
Talk about causing unrest.
Indeed.
Queen of Dan on Reddit said, I slept over at that place a good dozen or so times, and every time it's different. We've had moments that were so dramatic that we would run to each other like toddlers and huddle. And other times, not much happened except we'd spook ourselves with anticipation. But that place is definitely spooky. Another group caught an EVP of who they thought was Witters saying, I have a heavy heart.
Hometown Ghost Stories are Dave and Rob, and they investigated in 2014, and they decided to try out the claim that a certain door will close when AC is asked to do it. They really didn't believe that this was something that could happen. They said it looked, when you watch people doing it on video, it looks kind of fake and that kind of thing. So the first time they asked, AC, will you close the door? It closed immediately.
Oh, wow.
The second time, so they thought, well, let's test it out. Maybe that was a fluke or, I don't know, strong wind all of a sudden came along. The second time they asked, and it didn't close. So then they said, well, let's do a countdown to 3. And on 3, close the door. So they're counting down 1, 2, 3, and sure enough, the door closed on 3. Rob was in Mary's bedroom by himself when he heard a massive bang that startled him so much that he jumped to his feet and knocked over an end table. He tried to see what in the room could have made the sound. Did something drop or fall over? He couldn't find anything. Dave tried an experiment where he knocked on a wooden altar in the middle of a room and asked something to knock in return, and something did. He tried it again with the same result. When they reviewed the footage, they noticed they captured a shadow figure moving left or right when the knocking sounds were made. So it's almost like they captured the spirit making the knocks.
Interesting.
Rob was investigating Witter's bedroom later and wasn't really getting anything. And then all of a sudden there was a drastic drop in temperature in the room. And Rob could hear footsteps moving up the hall, and then he heard a door slam. So it was almost like there was somebody there that decided to get up and leave. He thought maybe it was Dave. But when he radioed him, he found out that Dave was out in his car in the parking lot.
Oh, well then.
Guess it wasn't him. Ghost adventures hit the Houghton Mansion early on. And when I say early on, I mean this was the second episode they ever did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for season 1. On the episode, a member of the Masons told Zach that he was in the mansion one day standing near the side entrance hall when he heard the side entrance door open and close, and then there were footsteps. He assumed someone had come in, and he looked and saw snowy footprints on the ground in the hallway leading away from the door. There was snow outside on the ground, so this wasn't surprising. He expected, if somebody's going to come in, they're going to bring snow in with them. What was surprising is that the footsteps just stopped abruptly, and there was no one else in the house that he could find.
Oh, wow.
So it's like they walked halfway into the room and then just disappeared. The crew were shown a wall that was made from rock taken from the Hoosac Tunnel. This was a tunnel that stretched nearly 5 miles and was constructed from 1851 to 1875. 200 men lost their lives during the construction, and people started calling it the Bloody Pit. I mean, that's a lot of people to die making a tunnel.
Yeah, really is.
There are those that think these stones are cursed because they came from the Bloody Pit, particularly with the tragedy that befell the Houghtons. That wall was there when the Houghtons lived there, so they're wondering if that cursed them. And it is interesting that it would be a car accident that would cause the issue. Now, if it had happened near the tunnel, I'd be like, whoa. A former president here, Josh Mantello, told Zach that members would use audio recorders in the house to see if they could catch anything, and that in Mary Houghton's former room, they caught screams and someone yelling, "Get out." Mantello also said he saw a full-bodied apparition on the 3rd floor standing in a doorway at night. They also captured a picture of a ghostly face in a 3rd-floor window. In the basement, Mantello and others have been tapped on the shoulder by something they couldn't see. During the investigation, they capture a wispy human-shaped shadow bolt from the left side of the hall to the right side, and they hear an audible yell from a woman. They also hear footsteps in Mary's room. They hear the sounds of doors shutting while in the Masonic temple. They capture an EVP of a man saying, "Ran for help." Could this have been John Witters? The Central New Hampshire Paranormal Society and Boston Paranormal Investigators investigated the mansion in 2014. They share on the BPI blog, "The session in the bedroom was interrupted by Eric Perry, who took David out of the room for a minute. David came back in and informed us that there was an incredible amount of activity in the basement, and that they eventually had to leave as several of the group members just cited a full-bodied apparition of a little girl." So the rest of the group heads to the basement, and they didn't see the apparition, unfortunately. But they continue writing, "We were asking several questions about the little girl entity, and when we played back a set of 3 questions, we heard an audible yes when we asked if she liked animals."
Aw.
After another short break, we headed to the ballroom, a large room that was directly below the Masonic temple and an addition attached to the backside of the property. The site for the addition sat on what was once Mary Houghton's garden, and we could have told you that in retrospect because the room smelled of flowers. Isn't that weird?
Oh, wow.
So they built this over her garden, and now that scent of flowers comes up. She's not happy that you built over her garden, so she's making the flowers go.
Clearly.
You can imagine the excitement from the group when we walked into this grand room and all smelled the same sweet scent. After another break, it was time to head to the 3rd floor. This is where the servants' quarters were located, including the room of John Witters, the chauffeur, who in his guilt shot himself in a barn formerly on the property. We spent about 20 minutes in his bedroom. The Freemason guides indicated that although his presence was felt around the house, it came and went periodically. During our time in the room, one of the investigators' meters constantly went off, but other than that, it was pretty quiet. That is, until we moved over to the next room. We started asking for anyone to give us a sign, specifically for John Witters. Several of us took photos, which led to one of the more interesting ones of the night, the photo of the potential shadow person or black mass that can be seen in the anomalies section of the report. I looked at that picture, and it is a big black, shadowy blotch in the picture. It wasn't cast by anything. So I don't know where it came from because I'm like looking all around the room going, what could cast that? It was up near the ceiling. So it was definitely not from a human that was in the room because they would not have been casting a shadow up there. After this, a spirit box that was on had been left by another group started getting active. Immediately, we all turned toward the box and were startled by what could not be mistaken for anything other than get out. We confirmed this with one another before we heard it again. As we started to get uneasy, it said it a third time, and we packed up and immediately left the floor. We did not want to be where we were not welcome, and clearly they weren't if it tells you 3 times to get out.
Right. Irene Lowenson wrote in the Williams Record in October of 2019, Williamstown resident James Cricket Wondolowski estimates that he has spent the night in the purportedly haunted North Adams Mansion 13 times. Wondolowski would stay in the mansion with groups of friends who were also interested in ghost hunting. On his first overnight, he and his friends saw a lantern-like light float up the stairs and heard creaking, but did not see anyone walking. Then the light went out. We all freaked out. And then we were quiet and we could hear footsteps right above our heads. We went up and there was nobody there. It was quite fun to go. Sometimes a lot of things happened. Sometimes nothing happened. On more eventful nights, he has felt a 40-degree gust of air in the middle of summer, heard a girlish giggle, and been scratched on the back of his neck, he said. His friend reported feeling a tug on his ponytail.
The Houghton family endured a tragedy no family should ever have to experience. Is the pain from the car accident somehow locked into the house, trapping those connected to the accident? What about the Masons? Were they just interacting with the former owners, or did they conjure some entities themselves? Is the Houghton Mansion haunted? That is for you to decide. Sounds like an interesting place to check out. Hopefully, whoever owns it, he's a hotel developer. Why would you buy a house and not do anything with it? I'm sure they're not just living in it. I don't know, but hopefully it gets opened again to the public. It'd be nice to check that out. We'd love to have you check out our website at historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for joining us on this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode is brought to you by our executive producers.
Dispatches from the Grave Digger.
We want to welcome into the cemetery Kelly McGuire and Diane Cohen. We're going to be putting both of you into chest tombs.
Thank you so much for supporting History Goes Bump.
Check out the website at historygoesbump.com.
Both were well-known Shakespearean.
They
shucks.
They shuck a lot of corn on stage.
It's a play about corn. They
shuck the
Can
corn.
you imagine people paying a bunch of money to watch a couple men shuck corn on a stage?
Corn is delicious. So
well,
maybe.
And then maybe they make it into popcorn and everybody just has a great time. The North Adams Women's Club raised funds to reconstruct the fort and was reopened as a memorial in 1933.
1933. Sound like you were going to say 35.
I think my tongue just gave up. It went 1930.
My tongue gives up often.
Come on, work.
This was a 7-passenger Pierce.
It's a Pierce.